Welcome, everyone, to Late Night, Friday Night, Young at Heart. I'm Father James DeLucio, and I am offering you nursery rhymes, stories, songs, poems, Mother Goose, Aesop's Fables, Lewis Carroll, limericks, larks, epics, stories of the great operas, and such, to keep us all young at heart. Tonight, a little survey of some highlights from The Christmas Book by Francis X. Weiser, a Catholic priest, a Jesuit, who wrote this book in 1952, but it keeps getting reprinted. This version, 2017. Little things that some you knew, some you didn't, some I knew, some I didn't. About our Christmas traditions. First, we all know, almost everyone, that the Christmas trees came in from the German immigrants into the United States, both Catholic and Lutheran. They both liked the trees. They had that in common, decorated trees. Cut down an evergreen, bring it inside, decorate it, candles, lights, popcorn, many other things. So, 1890-ish is when this became introduced and became very popularized throughout America. Why so late? Because prior to that, from the early 1600s, when the Puritans came over and they refused to acknowledge the value of parties and Christmas celebrations, they made Christmas a work day. They were all bah humbug. Things stayed that way for a couple hundred years in these United States because of Puritan and very strong Protestant Reformation ideas, trying to emphasize only the spiritual dynamics of faith. And it was even outlawed, to celebrate Christmas in 1600s, 1700s in various places in what is now the United States. And in Boston, they were still working on Christmas Day in the 1870s. Any rate, the Germans came in. We have the trees. Thank God. Now, also, candles in the window. Who brought those? The jolly old Irish. Yes, it came from the Irish. Indeed, it did. Around the same time, maybe a little bit before, but after, very popular, down to this very day. The Irish did it as a way of welcoming people to come in and to celebrate Christmas. And it was particularly important during the time when the Catholics were persecuted in Ireland during the Cromwell and subsequent rule. And so this way you'd know it was a Catholic home, too. How the British didn't catch on that, I don't know. But it seemed to prevail, and they brought it with them when they came to the United States. Right. Anything else? Yes. The names of the Magi, Melchior, Jaspar, Balthazar. How far back do they go in the tradition? They're not named in the Bible. Well, we know 3 has been a long tradition because of the 3 gifts. However, the first time we find these names in writing is by Saint Bede the Venerable in Great Britain in the year 735. And we all know, as I've mentioned many times, both on Luke Live and Young at Heart, when something appears in writing, it usually means that it's already part of the public awareness, the zeitgeist, or even the tradition before, for 100 to 200 years before something gets written. So you kind of figure the very early Middle Ages, like the time of St. Augustine and St. Jerome and others. So that's kind of interesting. 735. Okay. Oh, and why did we get Balthazar as black? Well, that goes back earlier to probably the fathers of the church, when they gave credence to the sons of Noah. Who are the sons of Noah? Shem, Japheth, and Ham, or Ham. They took on early representation of different peoples of the world. So Shem were the Semites, Japheth were Aryans, or more white-skinned people, and Ham, or Ham, were the Ethiopians and the Africans. So using there that sense of the children of Noah, those three sons rather, and the three magi because of the three gifts, the kind of personalities came there. Melchior very early on was considered the old one because the Semites were very old tribes of people. Gaspar was considered the young one. These new upstarts with their lighter skin, or Aryans, and Balthazar, B for black, again because of the influence of Ham, or Ham, being of African Ethiopian origin. So that's kind of interesting as well, don't you think? What else do I have to share with you? These Christmas legends. There's a few pages on that. I'm not going to read them for copyright infringement, but I'm just going to summarize them for you. I like this one. This one comes from 1100 to 1500, right prior to the Reformation, get you, right? Early 1500s Reformation. So prior to that, through Christendom, it was believed that on midnight on Christmas, so just the inauguration of Christmas, that a mysterious universal celebration took place in nature, that a spirit of peace and adoration prevailed over the whole world, that the cattle in their stables would kneel down, the deer in the forest, all in reverence that the very Son of God, that God himself had come and was right here on the earth. Heaven is brought low, conjoined with the material world. There was other legends as well. The one I like, I made reference to it last time because of that poem about the animals, that the animals could talk at midnight, and people of real prayer and true holiness would be able to discern them. So that's interesting, and that's even a little bit before St. Francis comes in and draws all the attention to the love of animals and the care of animals and our relationship with animals and all of nature. So I kind of like that one as well. And then we also have, let's see, a belief that all evil spirits disperse on Christmas because of God is now fully in our midst. And then there's that wonderful little passage from Hamlet by Shakespeare. Hamlet, no less, that very complicated, very adult play. But you know, it starts with ghosts, and the ghost is the spirit of Hamlet's father who wants revenge. So we can't figure he's not a heavenly creature if he wants revenge. We were talking about that the other day. Probably purgatory, probably hell, bent on revenge. Yeah, it's more about the hell than purgatory. There's, at any rate, all the same, when the soldiers are talking about this apparition and how odd it is, and it is near Christmas time at the beginning of Hamlet, this wonderful passage. Some say that ever 'gainst that season comes wherein our Saviour's birth is celebrated, the bird of dawning singeth all night long, and then, they say, no spirits dare stir abroad. The nights are wholesome, then no planet strike, no fairy takes, no witch has power to charm, so hallowed and so gracious is the time. So just a few things. Oh, one last one. It's a very old and probably a bit superstitious, but this still is in the mindset of many people, particularly in Eastern Europe, that it was obligatory on Christmas Eve to see that the house was thoroughly cleaned, that all borrowed articles, books, toys, are returned to their owners on Christmas Eve. You have to set everything right. Borrowed articles, tools, make sure your neighbor gets his or her tools back. That was important. And if there were any signs of work that you couldn't finish that night, you had to put it out of sight. No task could be started that could not be finished by nightfall, except, of course, for the lighting of the candles in the window and the putting up of the tree. I grew up with a tradition from my parents, the Italian American side, that the Christmas tree would not be put up until Christmas Eve. In fact, when we were very young, we didn't see the tree at all until we awakened on Christmas morning. And then when I was about third or fourth grade, I guess, then we were able to help decorate the tree on Christmas Eve. So these are just a few. The book has some more. It has quite a bit of history about those terrible times when Christmas celebrations were outlawed. And he goes into quite a bit of detail about that. But I just wanted to focus on the fun things because this is Young at Heart. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful weekend. We have just started the octave of Christmas, December 17th. This day until Christmas Eve is 8 days. Octaves are very important for prayer and preparation. And traditionally, today was the first day we were invited to sing the O antiphons, which got translated into O Come, Emmanuel. But we've been singing that all month, haven't we? I'll close with a little bit of that. The first verse of O Come, Emmanuel. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that mourns in lonely exile here, until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Have a good night and a lovely weekend, everyone. God bless.